Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 1, Borrowed Light Window. On the south wall of the passage is a small window that looks from the hall into the closet. This is a borrowed light window. As the closet was an interior space, this window allows light coming through the exterior window on the north wall of the passage to enter the closet. The borrowed light technique is as old as glass windows themselves, but was quite popular in Victorian-era buildings. Electricity was an expensive luxury, and the closets at the Charnley-Norwood House were still several decades away from being electrified when the spaces were constructed in 1897. The borrowed light window works so well that a light has never been installed in the closet. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 2, Dining Room Fireplace. The dining room fireplace is unique from the others in the Charnley-Norwood House. The mantel is a shallow, svelte, horizontal element that breaks up the otherwise vertical momentum of the brick chimney, which is the only fireplace in the house to have exposed brick from floor to ceiling. Having such a narrow mantel was a specific design choice, one that ran counter to common Victorian taste. Typical Victorian-era mantels are elaborate construction of shelves, mirrors, and niches that would be loaded with draped fabrics, decorative urns, and pictures. The narrowness of the mantel, both here and at the Charnley family's Adler and Sullivan designed house in Chicago, is designed to prevent a cluttered appearance, leaving only the clean lines of the architect's original intention. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 3, Built-in Furniture. Like many Victorian-era homes, the Charnley-Norwood House has an abundance of built-in furniture. The built-ins are reflective of the change in material culture that was taking place at the height of the Second Industrial Revolution when the house was built. At this time, Americans began to acquire more industrially produced possessions, such as clothing, linens, and books, and the need to stow such objects in the home grew. Scrawled on the back of the Charnley-Norwood House built-ins is a job number 1377, indicating that they were likely built off-site in a cabinetmaker's shop. Built-in furniture was originally found in every room in the house and closet, except for the kitchen and cook's bedroom. The most common built-ins at the house are chests of drawers, and these can be found in closets, pantries, and the dining room. Window seats are hinged to allow for storage underneath. While over time some of the built-ins have been removed from the house, many remain and add interest to the interiors. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 4, Window Screens. While the house was built as a winter vacation residence, we do know that the families occasionally visited their house in the summer season. Prior to the installation of central heating and air conditioning in the 1960s, other methods of keeping the house cool were necessary. Historically, the openings of the house had screens likely made by the same company that manufactured the windows and doors. Window screens during the 19th century were not as common as they are today. Developed in the mid-1800s, wire screens initially were intended to keep dust down and afford privacy when windows were open. It was not until the discovery in 1904 that mosquitoes carried malaria that screening openings became more common as a preventative measure. Over time, windows and door screens were removed from the Charnley-Norwood House as portions of the front porch were enclosed and additions were added to the east and west elevations. Today, several original window screens and a single screen door can be seen on the rear of the house. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 5, Kitchen. Victorian-era kitchens were far from today's kitchens that tend to be the center of the home. While there are similarities, such as a sink with running water and a stove, that is where they stop. Victorian kitchens tend to be stinky, sweaty, smelly, sound-filled places where work was done and not a place where any leisure time was spent. In the Charnley-Norwood House, a freestanding wood-fired range stood against the north wall. There were no kitchen cabinets, as food, dishes, and utensils were kept in the kitchen pantry or the butler's pantry. Originally coated in spar varnish as the rest of the home, the varnish was found to not hold up to the heat, soot, and grease in the kitchen. In 1898, after an attempt at revarnishing the kitchen was unsuccessful, the walls were painted white the following year and have remained that way since. The floor in the kitchen was never sanded or received a finish. Originally, it would have been covered with an oilcloth or linoleum floor covering for ease of cleaning. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 6, Outbuildings. In addition to the guest house, there were several other outbuildings on the property. Historic site plans and photographs are the only remaining record of these buildings, as many of these outbuildings were not kept up once their original purpose was supplanted. These buildings included a stables and servants' quarters, a woodshed, a well house, and a doghouse. These buildings were clad in the same cypress wood shingles as the house. The well house had walls made of diagonal lattice to allow air movement and circulation. The stables and servants' quarters building sat approximately 200 yards behind the house and was likely the only building on the property to survive the 1897 fire. If you've ever seen Frank Lloyd Wright's own home in Oak Park, Illinois, the building may look familiar as the stables and Wright's home were designed at the same time. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 7, The Photography of Winifred Norwood. Hanging on the walls throughout the house are reproduction photos taken by the Norwood's daughter, Winifred Norwood Shapker. The Norwoods' only child to outlive them, Winifred was an avid photographer in an era when it was uncommon for anyone to own a camera. While the exact camera she owned is unknown, it is likely that she used a camera produced by the Eastman Company, either the Kodak or Brownie No. 1 camera. Her subjects included intimate family snapshots that included her daughter, Elizabeth Betsy Shapker, views of the house and grounds, and picturesque views in and around Ocean Springs. The views of the house and grounds were particularly valuable during the post-Katrina restoration of the property. Norwood descendant Lynn Sutter donated the family photo collection in 2013 to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Most of the images in the collection date between 1898 through 1910. These images have been digitized and are available for view on the MDAH website. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 8, The Use of Glass in the Charnley-Norwood House. One of the first things visitors notice when touring the house is the extensive use of glass in doors and windows. Nearly half the front facade is glass, with the house having a total of 26 doors and 33 windows. These large amounts of glass were used to create a feeling of openness and establish a natural flow between the exterior and interior spaces of the house. Until the 19th century, glass production had been an artisanal process, and by the end of that century, glass manufacturing was a highly industrialized process. For the first time in history, a glassworks could make large panes of glass for relatively low costs. The design of the Charnley-Norwood House uses this to its advantage and was part of a broader movement that brought bigger panes of glass into residential design, something we often take for granted in the homes of today. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 9, Cypress Shingles. When rebuilt following the devastating fire in 1897, the exterior walls and roof of the Charnley-Norwood House were covered in cypress wooden shingles. The tapered shingles are approximately 16 inches long and 4 3/4 inch wide, while the average exposure when installed on the house is only 3 7/8 inches. The original shingles were circular sawn and produced by the Rudock Cypress Company of Rudock, Louisiana, a company that was founded and owned by Charles H. Rudock of Chicago, Illinois. Rudock and Fred Norwood would certainly have been acquainted, as both men were members of the Illinois Retail Lumber Dealers Association, an organization to which both men opened their lumber mills during a tour of the South in 1895. The origin of the shingles is known specifically as a result of Hurricane Katrina, which forcibly removed a good number of shingles from the house. Visible on the rear of these shingles is the stencil of the Rudock Cypress Company. In addition to the company name, the stencil also includes the word "best," indicating that the shingles used for the house were the highest grade shingles that the company produced. Innovations of the Charnley-Norwood House, Episode 10, Porches. Present on every elevation of the house, the porches make up a significant portion of the home's character-defining spaces. They include the large, prominent front porch, matching side porches, and a small porch at the rear of the house. While the house has just under 2,000 square feet of interior space, the porches add more than 1,000 square feet to this, with every room in the home having a doorway leading onto a porch. Over time, various changes have been made to the porches, such as in 1903 when the Norwoods screened the west end of the front porch. In 1905, following the birth of their granddaughter, the east end of the porch was screened. In 1920, during the Handy family's ownership of the house, the front porch was completely screened, and the porch rail was covered over in shingles. The side porches would be obscured by other additions made in 1920 and 1945. Following Hurricane Katrina, the porches were returned to their original configuration based on extensive research and finishes analysis, while a ramp was added to the rear porch, making the house more handicap accessible.